Thank you a lot for coming to our talk. It's my pleasure to introduce today's distinguished guest speaker, Dr. John Gray, a great author of the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, the best-selling relationship book of all years. He wrote 18 other books, and you can read about them on his website and his internet publications. And I won't keep you longer, and I let John Gray to speak for himself and share with you the differences between the genders. Thank you, John, for coming.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Well, it's really fun for me to be at Google since I live on Google. It's a researcher's dream to be able to Google everything instantly. You don't understand something, Google it. Understand something, Google it. You know, I remember one of my mentors a long time ago was saying that when you're speaking, if you use one word that somebody can't understand, then they tend to blank out on everything else you say. And one of the great things for Google for me is I'll be reading research and this, and if a word comes along I don't understand, I can immediately Google that and come back. Because to truly understand something, you have to actually understand every word. But we intuitively think we're going to get it at the end, but we don't. So in my message on Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, what's so much fun for me is typically people can relate to the examples, right, from your own personal experience. So just to know you a little bit as my audience, so I give the right talk. Who's read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? How many of you have read it? So a lot of you haven't. Okay, now how many of you haven't and have heard of it? So your parents read it, right? that was what I knew I was getting old, when people come up and think, oh, I love your book, and my parents read it. You know, I said, they started going on walks together. They actually, were so much happier afterwards, so they thanked me. And I said, well, when you get ready, you'll probably want to read the book too. So I'm going to give, for those of you who haven't read Men Are From Mars, some of the basic ideas of that in our short presentation. And we'll also have room for question and answers if you like to ask questions. I'll also briefly talk about my most recent book, which is called Work With Me, which is about 25 books later. I've applied the principles of understanding gender differences in a positive way. Because so much of the time when men and women show up differently in a relationship, we often have an intuitive reaction which is wrong. How many have read the book called Slow Thinker, Fast Thinker? It was a good book, but it talks about most of our interpretation of reality is automatic. Kind of like I know that building's quite a far away and you're closer to me. And when we're in relationships, when our partners say or do things, we have an automatic interpretation, which is often wrong, particularly when it's the opposite sex. So a lot of my ideas, I think the popularity of Men Are From Mars was that you really don't have to do anything to change your relationship to the better. Because so many of the problems that couples have in relationships is misinterpretation. And so if you can start to interpret a situation correctly, you find out the problem is not as big as you thought it was. There's an old Eastern Indian story of the person who sees a snake on the ground and it's dark and they start yelling and screaming, snake, snake. And somebody turns on the light and it's a stick. So many of the problems I see with my couples as a marriage counselor are big problems to them, and then I explain it to them, and it's a stick, and then you can work with the stick. So in the Work With Me, that's the second book I'll be briefly talking about. That's my most recent published book. It talks about gender differences in the workplace and how these basic blind spots between men and women. And we teach, through human resources and different companies, we go in and we do these workshops sometimes. And we did a survey of over 100,000 men and women from workshops. So they filled out the survey before they took the course. And we found that there are these basic blind spots. There's 8 that I focus on, but I'll mention one right now, which is we asked the women, do you feel appreciated in the workplace? And over half of the women felt they were not being appreciated by men. And then we asked the men, do you appreciate women in the workplace? And over 90% of men said, of course. So that's a blind spot. Men think that they're communicating appreciation, but women often not feeling appreciated. And this gives rise to one of the basic differences between men and women, which is that women feel valued and appreciated when you know what they do. When a man gets paid, get acknowledged for the result, good job, you did this, now you get this promotion or whatever. That makes a man feel valued and appreciated. Acknowledge what I do. But for a woman, she wants to be acknowledged for what she does, but she also wants to be seen. She wants to be heard. She wants to be understood. And this was my first insight into the world of men are from Mars, women are from Venus. What was it, over 30 years ago? Before I realized it, before I was even married to my wife, we've been married 28 years. But Helen is my assistant 30 years ago. And Helen comes to me and says she wants to quit. And I said, why would you want to quit? You're like the best. I just gave you a raise. You make as much as me, basically. And she said, it's not about the money. I just don't feel appreciated. And I said, all right, well, hold on. Why don't you feel appreciated? Because I thought she was a gift from heaven. And she said, well, John, you don't even know what I do. And my reaction as a man was, that's why I appreciate you so much. And we laugh because we can see the logic of that. Of course, I don't have to think. I don't have to plan. I don't have to do anything. She made all the arrangements. She put the money in the bank. She paid my bills. She organized my seminars. She handled all my clients. I just showed up at work and counseled 8 women a day. Which, by the way, when Men Are From Mars came out, everybody was so upset at me. Some people still are. How do you know this? I said, well, my credentials basically as a counselor is how many men have sat in a room and listened to women talk for 8 hours a day for 10 years? You have to get paid a lot of money to do that job. So I said to her, just let me, she said, you don't even know what I do. And so I caught on very quickly, and I said, well, give me a week, and let's see. So Helen continued to work for me for years. I just celebrated her birthday with her just recently. But all I did differently, and Helen stayed with me and felt valued and appreciated, was I took 5 extra minutes a day to find out what she did. And once I knew what she did, then she felt part of a team. Very important for women to feel part of a team, not to feel isolated. Second thing is she felt seen, and that I come in and actually look at her. And see, if you're a programmer, all you engineer brain, you're a guy. Eye contact is not so important for you. But to women it is. Watch women talk. They'll be looking at each other. Whereas guys could be looking off or looking down or looking around, sometimes looking at each other, but always when there's a point. If you're talking social talk with guys, we have to be looking at a football game or a computer screen. Or it was just the other night I was at a party with one of my old friends was sitting next to me. And my wife is sitting over here. Actually, it was Helen's birthday, and she's sitting in front. And I'm talking to Martin, his name is. And my wife points out to me 3/4 of the way into the evening, John, you're not looking at Martin when you talk. You need to look at him. I said, okay, honey. I looked at Martin. He didn't even notice either. So what I focus on is the little differences between men and women. It's not like a woman can't do what a man does. It's not that a man can't do what a woman does. And it's not that all men and all women fit into these slots so neatly. Generally, about 10% of men will tend to relate more to the female examples. 10% of women will relate more to the male examples. Women often come up to me and say, gee, I feel like I'm from Mars. And I say, well, that's conditioning to a great extent. Women today are conditioned to be like men, and there's no safety to acknowledge feminine aspects of who you are. And part of my message is to validate that, but not to negate if you're more on your masculine side. That's great. That allows you to often fit into the work world much better. And women will say to me after they read my book, they say, yeah, I feel like I've become a man to become successful, and I'm very confused when I get home. It's like I feel split. So I wrote a book which is called Why Mars and Venus Collide before I wrote this book. And why Mars and Venus collide is what's happening today is that women go into the workplace stimulates certain hormones. Now that hormone is the hormone that gets produced when you're solving problems. And particularly when you have a responsibility and it's all up to you and you're solving a problem. Now what hormone would that be? That hormone is called testosterone. It's the emergency hormone. It's the hormone when you feel pressured, when you feel a sense of, got to go fast, got to get this done, it's up to me, nobody else is going to do it. Or you sacrifice because It's a difficult thing, but so I can handle it because I'm getting paid and that's my job. That's the hormone that gets produced. It's testosterone. Well, the difference between a woman's body and a man's body is hormonal. These are real physiological differences. The average male needs 30 times more testosterone to be in a good mood. The number one cause of heart disease in men is low testosterone. There's no man that has a heart attack unless he has low testosterone, high estrogen. Estrogen being the feminine hormone. As men get older, they start thinking, I want to quit. That's because faulty diet, lack of exercise, too many estrogens in our environment. What happens is estrogen levels start rising, pushing testosterone levels down. That is the number one cause of heart disease. As soon as a man retires, which means he doesn't have work, which means I have to get up and do something, I have to solve problems, a man has 1 year before his first heart attack. This is a statistical fact. So statistical fact, not every man. But men need to work. Men need to go out there and solve problems because solving problems releases testosterone, and testosterone is the hormone that lowers stress for men. Does testosterone lower stress for women? No. Does testosterone being released feel good to women? Yes. It feels good. So women can love their testosterone job, but their stress levels rise and rise and rise. And this is shown in a study that was done in Scandinavian countries of several 100,000 women and men being tested, and they found that, and this is one of the areas where you have the greatest equality between men and women. I get frustrated when I go there because they call it equality. I call it blindness. We're all the same, which we're not the same, but at least there's equal respect for everybody, which is a good thing. But real equality is when you can recognize differences in the spirit of equality, equal opportunity, equal respect, regardless of man, woman, culture, race, whatever. So what they found in this study in Scandinavia, huge 4-country study, is that women in the workplace, their stress levels were twice as high as men's. When women came home from the workplace, their stress levels were 4 times higher than men. These are averages. And that basically means their happiness level is dramatically declining. University studies in America have repeatedly shown that in the 70s, women's happiness level was way up here and men's was down here. Men has pretty much stayed the same, and women has dramatically dropped. So what you get as women move more into the workplace, as an average, their happiness goes down. So what's going on there? When I say this, I'm not saying, oh, women shouldn't be in the workplace. I have 3 daughters. They all have jobs and careers. I've supported that completely. But they're happy. Their stress levels are low. They're educated to understand they have 2 parts. We all have 2 parts. The masculine side is solving problems, releasing testosterone. If you're a man, that will lower your stress. But what lowers stress for women? Well, this was a huge breakthrough that happened in 2002 at UCLA. They discovered that the hormone oxytocin, which is generally associated with childbirth and female orgasm, the hormone oxytocin is the hormone that actually directly lowers stress for women. And without an abundance of oxytocin in your body, your brain does not have an off switch, which means when you have problems, if a woman's upset, she's upset for days and days and days. She's still thinking about this, thinking about this. I was just counseling a couple, and they were in their 80s. And they haven't seen me in about a month, and she brings up an issue that happened 6 weeks ago or a month ago. He says, I can't believe she's still thinking about this. As you don't understand, women don't have an off switch. They keep going around and around and around. Now, how many women in this room can relate to that? You're not on camera, but you can relate to that? I'm getting some nods. Can I get some arms up? Let me just see. Yeah. See, this is where they've actually put men and women on computer scans when the sun sets. And what happens for a man and a woman is very different. Unless there's an emergency, you say to the man and woman, you say, sit down and relax. And you put your brain scans on to measure blood flow in the brain. And for the woman, as soon as she sits down, blood flow increases to the brain. Brain activity increases. You ask her, what is she thinking? What is she thinking? She's thinking about all the things she needs to do that she's not doing while she's sitting here on this couch. That's her brain going like this. You look at the man's brain, blood flow literally stops. It just goes back here to where he can keep his body temperature and breathing and so forth. And you ask him, what are you thinking? And what does he say? Nothing. And if you didn't have that test, the woman says, you must be thinking of something. You must be thinking of something. And this is a difference. And so what's going on there, which is I talked about in Men Are From Mars, long before all this research came about, I just observed it, is that men typically go to work, they're solving problems all day, they're releasing testosterone, particularly if a man is successful, which means he feels confident, I know how to solve problems. So if I get in my car and I'm driving 100 miles an hour, if I feel like I'm in a good car and I'm a good driver, actually my stress level goes down. How many men can relate to that? Of course, you're doing something which is extremely dangerous, by the way, because if you were to let go of the steering wheel, you would die. Or if a deer ran out in front of your car, which you have no control over, you would die. But your brain, basically, you're producing huge amounts of testosterone, releasing it, and dopamine. Dopamine is the brain chemical focus. So you're going right into focus zone because there's danger. So dopamine and testosterone go hand in hand. So your stress levels are going down. So quite often, I noticed that if I got in an argument with my wife or something was stressing me out, I'd want to go for a drive in my car. And I would just drive a little faster than usual, so I have to look front and backwards for the police. And I would start to relax. Now, of course, if my wife was in the car, that would raise her stress levels hugely. So there's huge differences here in how we cope with stress. But that's just one little example. But typically what I would see happening, what I still see happening, which a lot of men don't do now, and this is part of my message to men, is that we would go to work and we would solve problems, and we come home from work and we forget problems. You have to realize for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and I've gone 18 times around the world, been with indigenous tribes around the world. When the sun sets, the men sit around because their job is in the jungle doing what they do when there's sunshine. Now they're sitting around, or they're a guard sitting around doing nothing as well. So they don't move when the sun sets. They actually need to relax. And when they relax, their brain, in order to relax, their brain literally has the ability to forget stressful messages. So the way men cope with stress is you solve problems, and at the end of the day, you forget your problems. And we have a shut-off. We can turn them off. And when you turn off your problems, you relax. And when you relax, your body rebuilds testosterone. That's how you rebuild testosterone, is to do anything a woman would consider to be a complete waste of time. So he'll come home from work, he'll sit around, maybe watch the news, sit on his computer, do something, play a video game, anything. And she's going, but we got this, and we got this, and we got this, and there's this, and you forgot this, and you're not doing this. And she can't understand why he's not attending to all those things. But he's doing what he has to do to cope with stress, which is to turn off all responsibilities for a little me time. And she's going, well, why does he get me time and I don't? Because you can't. You should be admiring that. You should be going, I wish I could do that. And of course, women, you do subconsciously admire it. This is all the spa magazines, all the up-level gold watch magazines. They always show some beautiful spa resort place, and a woman is sitting in meditation, and she seems to be so beautifully calm and peaceful. You have no idea. She's worrying about 50 things, but the illusion is that she can turn off her brain and be completely happy like that, which is an illusion for women today. They can't. But what this research in 1992 showed is how you can, and you can do it. The hormone that allows you to relax is oxytocin. Oxytocin is stimulated in a variety of ways. I've written whole books on oxytocin, how to stimulate it, how you lose it, how you get it, and so forth. We'll go a little bit over it today. And with oxytocin, when a woman is giving love, okay, if you're nurturing others, if you're caring about others, if you're thinking about others, if you're helping others, basically if you're taking care of your kids, because women for thousands and thousands of years. If you go to an indigenous tribe, you'll see the babies are being born every year. Okay, women are just pregnant most of the time. They're taking care of the kids. When the sun sets, the men are all sitting around doing nothing, sharpening their tools or whatever, telling stories or not talking at all. Women are completely busy. They're nonstop action, nonstop busy, busy, busy. But their stress levels are dramatically low. What is lowering their stress? When you feel you're in an environment where there's no time pressure, the number one inhibitor of oxytocin production is feeling not enough time. The number one complaint I hear from women today is not enough time. There's too much to do and there's not enough time. And when you feel as a woman, there's not enough time for me to do what I'd like to do what I enjoy doing. It's a huge perplexing thing for men when we see women say, I have no time for me. He'll take a deep breath and go, how's that even possible? Because if a guy runs out of time for me, he just takes it. But when a woman is feeling stressed, your mechanism to lower stress is to nurture others and release oxytocin. Oxytocin, when you're giving to other people, caring for others, being concerned for others, doing for others, not necessarily solving problems, being in a social relationship, listening to someone, helping them, whatever. It's not so much solving problems as nurturing. See, here's the difference between nurturing, which is oxytocin releasing, and testosterone, which is our nurturing is oxytocin releasing, and problem solving is testosterone producing. So my wife is a gardener. When she's planting her seeds, when she's caring for her seeds, that's nurturing. When the irrigation system is broken and water is spurting up, that's solving a problem. So you see how solving a problem is the illusion that I'll solve it and it's done forever. And then, of course, they come back. So this is men make great emergency workers. A big problem comes, I'm going to solve it. Then you feel like, now I can rest, relax, forget about that. But women are designed to not forget about things. This is the big complaint men have. It's 30 years into, I'll just do a funny story here. My wife and I were in the Galapagos Islands. You know, the Galapagos turtles live long lives. There's a T-shirt they're selling there. It's these two old turtles talking. And the husband saying to the female turtle, honey, the affair was 97 years ago. Can we let it go? But when she's under stress, all of her memories come up. See, this is how women cope with stress, is talking about what's stressing you out. So the memories come up. Men cope with stress by forgetting those things. Forget it. So a woman's busy talking about stressful things, and a man goes, just forget it. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Just do this and this and this. Don't take that exit next time. And the worst is a man will listen to you complaining about your job. He'll say, just quit that job. You can get another job. As if you're going to say, gee, I hadn't thought of that. What a brilliant idea. No wonder I'm married to you. You're so smart. But see, when a man hears problem, he wants to kill it. You know, basically it's run from it or kill it. You know, solve it, fix it. Because that releases testosterone, then he relaxes. For a woman, testosterone does not lower her cortisol levels. It doesn't raise them. It just doesn't lower them. So what lowers stress levels for women is oxytocin. So now when you're in a personal relationship and you're nurturing others, you're releasing your oxytocin, your stress levels goes down. But guess what? Giving doesn't rebuild your oxytocin. What rebuilds oxytocin, so you have it to give, is when you feel you're receiving support. So for women, everything is about reciprocity. It's I give and I get back. I give. If you're my friend, I do something for you, and now you're obligated to do something back. If we're two girlfriends and I call you up, what the first thing I'll do as a woman is say, tell me about your kids, or tell me about this. It's like I remember everything about you, and I ask lots of questions, get you talking, and now you owe me 5 minutes of listening. Women can believe when a guy will talk about himself and then not ask her questions. It's like, how can he just talk about himself? And he's over here thinking, why does she have nothing to say? Because women eagerly ask questions to draw somebody out because they so much value being heard. See me, hear me, touch me. All of these things are oxytocin producers. So that if you feel seen and heard and you feel backed up, if you're part of a team, and this is women in tribes. Women have always been in tribes. You go to indigenous cultures, they're doing everything together all the time. And there's never any rushing, by the way. There's a sense of support. It's that you feel that you have support at all times. It's not like you need that support all the time. It's not like you're this needy person. It's just that you always have backup. And so women, because their instinct is always to be giving, because giving releases oxytocin and you have a reward system to make you feel good, women are busy always giving. But if it's all women you're working with all day long, everybody's giving, so everybody's receiving. And suddenly you take women and put them in hand with men who don't live in that world or in a corporate environment. It isn't structured that way. See, the whole difference of Mars world and Venus world, we have to sort of blend them together. One is not bad, one is not better. But to make sense of it, you look at the two worlds. In the Mars world, the strong survive. The better you are, the bigger result you get. The harder you work, the smarter you are, the bigger result. You get paid more. And gee, he didn't get paid much, but look what you did. You got more. At home, in the personal world, the child who's the sickest gets more. They get more attention, they get more help, they get more support, and everybody gets what they need. It's not what you earn, it's what you need. But you don't go into your boss and say, I really need that job. Your chances of getting it go down. It's like, I've earned this role. Look what I've done. I do this and this and this. Therefore, I should get this reward. These are two different worlds of thinking that blend together. And this is the male-female relationship, which is a new experiment on planet Earth. If you go to any of the indigenous tribes, we're talking thousands and thousands of years of history. Go visit in Africa. You'll see two fires at night. Women around one, men around another. Go to the Amazon. I was just in your Google map area where you can see the whole world. And I was going to all these places I've been. Go down to the Amazon. Go to the Amazon. You'll see at night. Men are sitting around. They're behind a wall. And they're all busy with the children and cooking and cleaning and making alcoholic beverages to give to the men. How do they make those alcoholic beverages? Just a little trivia here. They chew these roots. They masticate them, chew them, and spit them into this bowl with a little heat under it. And if they go for 3 or 4 days, it becomes very alcoholic. So the men are all just sitting around. The women come out with their bowls occasionally and hand it to their husbands. And there I am with the chief. So the chief's wife gave me his bowl. It was this big honor. Just tasted terrible. That chief, by the way, Ashwar chief, he was also very proud of his 7 shrunken heads. They do exist. And through my 2 translators asking him, well, why do you do that? He says, very clear. I have 7 children. I said, well, explain that to me. He says, well, the jungle only has so much food and you can only get so much from your grocery store. And if you're going to bring a child into this world, you have to eliminate somebody from a neighboring tribe. Otherwise, there'll be a shortage of food. That was their sustainability program. I think we've come a long way. It's tribal thinking versus global consciousness. Now we're moving into the world where if I hurt someone out there, I'm hurting myself. And the history of tribal consciousness is, I don't care about them, I care about my children. That's a mafia family. Mafia fathers are very loving to their kids as long as they say yes. But not to anybody else. So this is what we're trying to get out to see, and that's the experience of the heart opening. And ultimately, this happens through this great experiment of romance. Men and women coming together in romantic relationships. You seek out, you find someone that your heart opens to. And can you keep your heart open to the same person who's not perfect? So for the first 3 years, it seems as though they're perfect. And then reality sets in. And reality sets in because when you meet someone new and there's sexual attraction, your brain produces massive amounts of dopamine. How many are familiar with the term dopamine? Okay, that's when you're driving your car fast. That's when you're really focused on a project. That's when you're getting a reward. That's when there's danger. That's when there's sex. That's when you're doing, any addictive substances goes into the nucleus accumbens where dopamine produces lots of pleasure. So anything that's pleasurable for you is producing dopamine. So in the first 3 years, one of the major dopamine stimulators is newness. Newness stimulates dopamine. Now, what is the opposite of newness? Not newness. And what happens after 3 years? It's not new. And then to make things worse, when you have an argument, what does she generally do? She brings up the past. So that's definitely not new. It's the worst thing couples can do. And I'm not putting it on her because she'll start it, but then he'll come back and now he'll start going into the past too. And now you're both living in the past. As soon as you can't be in present time, dopamine levels start decreasing. All that passion you felt in the beginning dissipates after 3 years unless you have relationship skills. You have to understand the software. Were so many of you into software? That's how I got into this whole relationship thing. I used to work as a programmer back in the days of Stanford Research Institute and COBOL. So I used to program the computers, and at a certain point I realized I should program people. So I had that very analytical perspective. Men are like this, women are like this. If we do this, then this. If we do this, then that. And we can see it predictably. A man comes home. He doesn't know anything about men and women differences. He says, "Hi, honey," and he goes and sits down and reads a book. And she's going, "Is that it?" He used to be excited to see me. Matter of fact, what she'll do if they're married in a house is he comes home, she'll test him. She'll go to another part of the house and wonder, does he even miss me? Does he care about me? She's playing hide and seek, Venusian hide and seek. I'm hiding and you're supposed to find me. So she's going, I could be dead and he wouldn't even care. And he's from Mars. He has his own little hide and seek. Men come home, she goes, she's not around. Good. He just wants to be alone, no interference, nobody calling on, nobody asking for anything. Just give me a break for a while. So he's playing hide and go seek, but the rules are don't find me. He doesn't want to be found. She wants to be found. Men solve problems to feel better and then forget them. The easiest way to solve a problem is forget it. Mañana, tomorrow. I don't have to deal with it now. And that's what we're trying to help you with, but it doesn't work for her. And she'll be talking about things, and it just blows him out of the waters. He'll go, oh my gosh, I'll make $1 million on a book. We'll be doing a bunch of fun stuff together. I'll come home one day, a week later, and I'll leave the glass out on the counter. And she'll lose it and go, is it that hard to put your glass this far over to here and put it in the dishwasher? I mean, can't you at least put it there? And I'm thinking, what is she, nuts or something? What? We're the luckiest people in the world. We're having an argument over a glass, which is right here. How could she do that? But when you understand her world, and part of the craziness from my perspective is 2 days before, it was a big bunch of all these dishes were everywhere. It was piling up. It was some party we had and nothing had been done for a couple of days. So she spent much of the day cleaning up. So it was completely clear. So you have to imagine this. You've been living with trash, and women see this 10 times more than men. They actually have more cells in their eyes. They see it. They can't ignore it. Guy comes home. He sees his TV set. That's it. Doesn't see anything. She sees everything, and it's hard for her to relax if it's not in order, organized. So here it is. It's been cleaned up. She spent all day cleaning it up. And from her point of view, can't there just be a moment where it stays so pretty and nice? So it just triggered a button. She had an emotional reaction. And when women have emotional reactions, see, men think that emotional reaction is just about the glass. But it's never about just the first thing she talks about. That's just the warm-up. That's the foreplay for the big story that's about to come. She's got all kinds of things that are bothering her that have been building up. It's like for women, it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Women hold this stress up, and finally something happens and it starts to come out. And when it comes out, a guy thinks you're nuts. But here's a way to help, again, interpret each other correctly. She's not nuts at all. It's just that she has a greater need to talk about what's bothering her. Men have a greater need to forget what's bothering them. So our job is to forget about it. Her job is to talk about it. So here's a little difference. We come into some physiology. The emotional part of the brain, called the limbic system, is twice as big in a woman than a man. Okay? Big difference, twice as big. Under moderate stress, a woman will experience 8 times more blood flow to the emotional part of the brain. Under moderate stress. Under extreme stress, a man will experience that blood flow. But the problem has to be really big. Women will experience an emotional reaction to small problems. And so a man misinterprets her emotional reaction as if she's saying the problem is big and she doesn't know what to do about it. So we're constantly seeing women when they get emotional, like, what, she can't handle that? She's not saying I can't handle that. She's just having an emotional response to it as a way to let go of stress. A man's way to let go of stress is to detach, to separate from his emotions. And you can see this in brain scans. The amygdala in a man is wired up to go right to the part of the brain, fight or flight is the amygdala, into solving the problem. You know what Freud did? It's totally different from modern therapy. 90% of the people who see modern therapists are women. Why? It's changed. It's eye contact. It's how do you feel? How else do you feel? What else do you feel? What else happened? How does that make you feel? It's all this personal nurturing interaction. Freud did none of that. He had mostly men. You go into a dark room where you had no eye contact. You'd lie down on a couch, which every man loves to do. He'd sit behind you, and all he would do is take notes. He'd ask you questions, and you would solve problems. Why do you think this? And why do you think that? And why do you think this? He could have just been saying, and what is what is 23 times 17? And you would have to calculate these problems. Just solving problems and relaxing lowers a man's stress. It wasn't some big magical thing. But for women, it did nothing. So gradually evolved for women. And usually it was just very wealthy men that did therapy, because once you're a man and you have lots of wealth, you go crazy. Why? By crazy, I mean look at the National Enquirer and see all the wealthy superstar people. They get divorced, they have battles, they take drugs, they're going through rehab. What's going on is that they don't have to work anymore. These are men who don't have to work, so they get to do what they like to do. When you do what you like to do, oxytocin gets produced. Oxytocin doesn't lower stress in men. Doing anything that women like to do does not lower stress in men. That's why in the beginning, men are so happy to do things with you. And after a while, they're ready to just sit on the couch. And what you'll say to them is things like, hey, what would you like to do? He'll say, I like to just sit here and have you make me dinner. Or you might want to go out to dinner tonight. And you say to him, hey, John, would you like to go out to dinner tonight? And what does every woman interpret that to mean? What she's really saying is, I'd like to go out to dinner tonight. Wouldn't you like to go out to dinner? Let's go out to dinner tonight. But she doesn't say that. She says to him, hey, John, would you like to go out to dinner tonight? If he's not initiated into the Venusian language, which is very convoluted and changing all the time depending on her mood, would you like to go out to dinner tonight? No, I'd rather just stay home. You could make me this dinner. Because he actually thinks you're asking him what he'd like to do. The flip side of this is Friday night comes along, and this is we have this experiment of romance. Marriage is based upon love and affection and romance, which is magnificent. I've been married my 28 years. To experience passion with somebody that you know, it's like a miraculous experience. Very few people have ever experienced it. They have to have somebody new, somebody different. Actually experience passion with somebody you know. It was like 7 years into our marriage is when I sort of woke up to how great my life was. Not that I wasn't having a good time, but making love with my wife, it was, fireworks. It was spectacular. It was one of those times where afterwards you just laugh at how fantastic it was. And then I said to her, wow, that was better than it was that was as good as it was in the beginning. And she goes, oh, that was better. Well, I said, what do you mean? She says, well, in the beginning, the sex was great, but you didn't really know me. Now you've seen the best of me, and you've seen the worst of me. And you still love and adore me. That's real love. That's real love. See, in the beginning, it's a glimpse of what it feels like. It's the brain chemicals of love, but you don't even know who you're reacting to. It's mostly fantasy. In order to keep your heart open, we need to have these advanced communication insights. Because what do you do? If a guy needs to go to his cave, one of the big insights of Men Are From Mars, now it's pretty much gone into the culture, man cave. He needs his man cave. He goes to his man cave, except men typically don't come out. So I teach women how to bring him out of the man cave. He's got to have that, but he also needs a little incentive to come out. If you say to him, what would you like for dinner tonight, or what would you like to do? He'll say, just sit in my man cave and continue doing what I'm doing. As opposed to you have to know what you like, what you want, learning how to ask for support. These are all like new skills. Women have never had to do that in the past. And for thousands and thousands of years, in indigenous cultures, women don't ask men for anything. They don't even talk to men. Men learned a man's role from his father. Women learned to do from mother. That was it. There's very little connection and communication. So it's learning to take the time that we need. And for men, it's often alone time. And for women, it's connection time. If you want to keep the connection open with a man and you want to keep him connected to you, your role is to, in a sense, draw him out. And one of the best metaphors for this is when I was going to places in indigenous India. You go to these temples that are 5,000-year-old temple, and you'll see all around the temple, men are sitting in meditation. Not the women at the spa. Men are all sitting in meditation because they can more quick. It's not automatic, but a man has the ability to shut the world out, and that is the most powerful way for him to rebuild his testosterone and regenerate his body. So men are all meditating at the temple, and women are all dancing around naked with little bells in their waist. And their job? To get men out of meditation. You're supposed to draw us out of the cave. Their whole mythology is Shiva would meditate 10,000 years or a million years or whatever, and his wife has to dance around them till finally they make love and create the world. But it's the woman that draws the man out. And women today, they don't even care about drawing the man out. They just like go on with their life, and then they misinterpret. He's sitting in his cave. What you start to think is, well, he doesn't love me. He didn't used to go to the cave before. And that's because he had the newness in the relationship that would produce huge amounts of dopamine. And then that produces testosterone. So he wasn't needing to rebuild it as much. So now you're in the relationship. He's taking more time away. He doesn't have that same attraction to you had before. He's starting to pull away. And women go, oh, I have to get it back. I have to get it back. And you run after him. And he runs away more. So that was one of the big themes in Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, is men are like rubber bands. When they want to get close to you, and then they pull out. When they pull out, like a rubber band, they stretch. And when it reaches its length of how much space do I need, then he springs back, and he falls in love with you again. And then he pulls away, he misses you, and he springs back. Now, I'm going to go on a trip to China in next week or so, for 3 weeks. I haven't been away from my wife in 8 years for 3 weeks. But what I know is I have the best sex of my life when I come home. That other time I was on a tour for 3 weeks, and it was the best sex of my life then. Why? Because I have pulled back. And when I pull back, I have a chance to miss her. I have a chance to rebuild my focus on her. I have a chance for my testosterone levels to rise. And when I come back, it will just be super stud land. I'm really looking forward to it, much more than how much I'm getting paid, which is a lot as well. But that is really an exciting thing. So when men pull away, they spring back like a rubber band. And then once they're in, then the rubber band gets soft. I mean, it's just a metaphor for sex. Imagine a man just went in and stayed. You'd be wanting to push him away. He pulls out, he goes in. He pulls out, he goes in. And it's that dance of coming closer, pulling apart. And that's his role, to go in and pull back. He has the hormones for it. Testosterone is the in and out urge. This is testosterone. When women don't understand the hormonal differences between men, when he pulls away, what do? You run after him. And so if you're running after him, does the rubber band ever get to stretch? And how do you run after him? I go into all the details in the books, but you say, what's the matter? Is there something wrong? Or let me do something for you. Or let's do this together. Or what would you like to do? And now you're concerned about him. This is when he pulls away, that's when you have to come back to being self-sufficient, self-reliant. I have a life, and you're lucky to be part of it. This is the whole, if you can stand in your place without getting insecure and running after him, that causes him to want to come back. Because see, men really need women. to be happier. We can only get to a certain level of happiness. Then we have to be able to make a woman happy to take us to a higher level. The illusion we all have as men, we get caught in this trap, is that we think we can make her happy. You can't make a woman happy. You can only make a woman happier. You're not responsible for her happiness. And men, because in the beginning, all that newness stimulates huge amounts of dopamine, just like winning the lottery, just like superhero. That's why they call heroin. Heroin. You get to be a hero and sit down and do nothing. Makes you feel like a hero. A woman makes you feel like a hero. Makes you feel fantastic. Look what I did. She's so happy. The problem is when you take credit for all of her happiness, when she's not happy, look what you feel. You feel like you failed. You shut down. You get bent out of shape. You get pouty. You get feminine. So what people don't understand is this feminization of men is when men become all negative emotions. If you're on your masculine side, you have healthy testosterone. You don't get afraid. You don't get angry. You don't cry unless the problem is really big and there's nothing you can do about it, like grieving a loss. There's places for feelings, but not in arguments. Men used to be taught this stuff, how to endure pain without talking about it. An initiation for an American Indian, they'd stick sticks through the breast in front of the whole village at 13 years old. They ride tight ropes to it and slowly raise you, throw the rope over a limb, slowly raise you in the air, and you hang there the whole day, and you're not allowed to cry out. You have to learn to deal with that pain. You have to contain it inside yourself. And now, do we need these initiations today? No, we have a more advanced initiation. Try listening to your wife without saying anything for 10 minutes, without reacting back. See, you have to learn as men how to contain the female side of you inside and not become a female and start whining and complaining back. This destroys marriages. A woman will complain. A man that has 10 more back. He says, I can beat that. I'm a man. I got testosterone. I can do more. And now you get this little tit-for-tat argument. Nobody's taught men today. You don't do that. That's not what men do. What women need most is to feel heard, and then a magic trick happens. She feels better, and nothing has changed. This is like a revelation. I have women coming to my office so unhappy. When they leave, they're so happy. And after a while, I point out, do you realize that you come to my office unhappy, and you leave happy, and nothing has changed? Nothing has changed in your life. It's all inside ourselves, how we look at the world. As a couple, men can learn how to support a woman. Women can learn how to receive that support. That's the whole new dance, is women learning, how do I motivate him to give me the support I need? Because he wants to do it. But it's very hard. Start right when he goes to his cave. You're thinking, you misinterpret thinking, he must not love me. So how can you go and ask for support to somebody you think doesn't love you? Or ask for help around the house. Women need way more help. How can you ask? You look at him with eyes of resentment. Aren't you helping? Aren't you joining in? Why aren't you helping me? Well, he needs a job description and he needs to be paid. Paid is your happiness. So let's say you need him to do something. Well, would you move that box? And it's the third time you've asked him. He moves the box and you glare at him like, finally you did it. As opposed to, oh, you moved the box. Then next you're training him to do little things to make you happy. Because in a man's mind, big things make you happy, not little things. He's dating you, he's only doing little stuff, and he figures if little stuff makes you happy, wait till I do the big stuff like commitment and marriage or sharing my income. That's the big stuff, then I don't need to do the little stuff. But it's the little stuff that actually generates the oxytocin. So if I give one rose to a woman, she gets a surge of oxytocin. If I give her 24 roses, in my mind, that's at least 24 surges, right? No, it's just the same surge. So think of it in terms of points. In a man's mind, I'm giving her 24 roses, 36 roses. That's 36 points. That should last me half the year. It's 1 point. And why are roses so symbolic of romance? Because they die in a week. You have to keep nurturing it. You have to keep nurturing it. So once men understand this stuff, women are not so complicated. It's easier to make the relationship work. But it is an art. It is like learning a new program. It's a new system. And once you learn the new system, it's really easy. But when you turn over to a new system, it's really hard for a while. That's what we're going through right now. So we have about 10 minutes for question and answers. I see one right over here. Go right ahead. Okay, so you'd like to know how women sabotage communication at work, because that is probably one of the things that I write about in Work With Me. So I'll tell you one, I have 10 minutes to talk, so I'll give you one way women sabotage communication at work is they simply use a phrase, Bob, could you do this for me? And Bob will say, sure, and then forget to do it. And you'll think, how could he forget? And this is something you experiment with this week. Instead of using, could you do this, can you do this, say, Bob, would you do this for me? And you'll see he will remember to do it. It's linguistics. If you say would, a man feels he's making a promise. If you say, could you do it? Yeah, I could do it. It doesn't even go into the front part of his brain. It literally doesn't go there. The next one, another way, is not giving enough feedback to a man that you value him. Because women just assume that if you're interacting with him, he must feel valued. So one of the ways a woman can communicate value to a man, that you value him, 3 phrases. You start doing this week, you'll see a huge difference in the men you work with. He's talking. When he pauses, say, that makes sense. And just brighten up. What? That makes sense. You'll see he'll take a double take. What did I say? Somebody's acknowledged I make sense. That makes sense. Another one is with a little female enthusiasm, good idea. You'll see mood will change. And at least a couple of times a week, go, brilliant. Yes. What else can I do for you? I mean, now I know the flip side of this, how do men sabotage? Well, I'll do a couple on men, which is how men could sabotage relationships in the workplace. Same thing at home, which is ask more questions. Whenever you think you're ready to give a solution or a point of view, ask another question. If you show interest in a woman's point of view, you start building a bond of trust, as opposed to just being interested in solving the problem. Men are just interested in solving the problem. But if you can just ask another question, it takes your interest into her point of view. If a man can ask that extra question. Here's the next one. As a male manager, particularly, but working on a team with women, when there's a problem and a woman's presenting the problem, don't immediately give what you think is the answer. Instead, pause and say to her, and what do you think we should do about this? And listen to her answer. Because so much of the time, if you talk about a problem, men jump in there with 30 times more testosterone, which gives you faster reaction time. I got the answer. I'll solve that problem. And he doesn't realize that you have the answer too. So you're sabotaging your success by not letting him know you have an answer. That would be another topic on how women sabotage. But men sabotage building trust and a sense of cooperation when they're working with women by jumping in with solutions rather than asking a few questions first. But for men, it's like playing basketball. I want to grab the ball and dunk it myself. And women are all on a certain level, well, let's all take turns and let's all take credit together. We're a team. We did it all ourselves. And a man's over here, but I did this. So anyway, a lot on that. That's from the book, Work With Me. Well, I'm asking the question where you hear, I mentioned I had a study of 100,000 men and women that we took their evidence right from the book, which is another one of the blind spots was the number one complaint women have, or we asked this question, it just happened to be the highest one, is do you experience that men listen to you? And over 70% of women said men don't listen. They asked the men, do men listen to women? And 90% of the men said, of course. So in his world, he's listening, but in her world, she doesn't feel heard. That's a gap. And yes, we've done the research on that. And I did that book just because people would say what you just said. Well, where's your research on this? I've probably talked to more people about relationships than anybody in history, than the whole planet history of the world. That's all I do is talk to people about relationship experiences. Not in a scientific study with 18 men and women, with thousands of people, with 50 people, again and again and again. And what I see is these themes. But I wrote that book just so people who like to look at the digits can actually see the digits and how men and women truly see the world through different eyes. But I appreciate the comment. It's a force that we have to overcome because there's a huge force which wants to say we should all be the same. We should all think the same. We should all react the same. And if we can all just become one, then the world will be a better place. It will be fairer for people. It will be fairer for people when we're able to appreciate our differences, appreciate our different strengths, and create room for people to be different. That is what will make this world a better place. Yeah, women have a lot more adrenaline going on than men. What happens with adrenaline is produced from dopamine. So I'll give you an example you can relate to. As a man, you're driving a car, around 80 miles an hour, you feel very relaxed, right? Easy going. And then you hit it up, there's a certain point between 80 and 120 where most men will start to feel the adrenaline. It's like, there's like this energy inside. That's the shifting of dopamine, which you're confident, you're capable, you're online. That's dopamine, lots of testosterone being produced. Now your concerns start to increase. That's a dropping of your serotonin, your optimism. You're starting to think of what could go wrong. That's serotonin dropping. So when your serotonin levels start to drop, your dopamine converts into adrenaline. And adrenaline gives you even more ability to react fast. So you get spikes in testosterone at that point, maybe 10 times more. But then you deplete. So then you need more recovery time afterwards. And this is all about how much adrenaline gets produced. For women, your vulnerability in your brain is that because your limbic system is so much more active than men's, you tend to run out of serotonin much faster than men. This is why women have depression 4 times more than men. They run out of serotonin faster under moderate stress, as opposed to men. Canadian research shows that men actually make serotonin 50% more efficiently. That's because we have more muscle mass. Men store 50% more of residue serotonin, which is probably evolutionary development, because you're in danger. Your life is in danger, and you have to stay cool, calm, and collected to prevent your dopamine from converting into adrenaline. But adrenaline, particularly, once you feel adrenaline, as a man, you really need to physically move your body. If you don't burn the adrenaline off through physical movement of the muscles, then what occurs is cortisol levels will start to rise. And cortisol levels don't go away very quickly. Adrenaline can burn off like that. But once your cortisol levels rise, it's sort of a slow rise and it stays in there. It's the worst thing for your health. Cortisol inhibits digestion, inhibits your immune system, inhibits your detoxification system, causes brain injury. All those things are directly related to chronically elevated cortisol levels. And this is the world that's happening for women today. So women's health issues are dropping down. More women have heart attacks than men today. And this can all be remedied, not by saying women should be home, it's by saying women should have a balanced personal life where they schedule their lives so that they're doing their testosterone-stimulating activities balanced by personal, fulfilling home experiences in a personal life to balance the work life. And it's understanding all those dynamics of what creates oxytocin in your body, because our world has become way too testosterone-oriented. And ultimately, for men, love is very important to men as well. And if he comes home and a woman can't be loving, then you get a man who doesn't come out of his cave. So there's a huge balance and upset. So many of the problems we experience today with all of the mass shootings and all that stuff that's going on, we see the kids going and shooting people. These kids are always on antidepressants or antipsychotics. They're always on drugs. Since we started using drugs for mental illness, there's now, since 1980, 35 times more mental illness in America. 35 times more. People, once they start taking medications, don't go off. They do not heal the brain. They change the brain, and the problem goes worse and worse. That whole story is written in my most recent book, which you can all get a free, for right now, free pre-publication copy. Just doing a free download at marsvenus.com. It's called the Mars-Venus Wellness Solution for Focus. So focus is the challenge for our children today is 1 out of 5 boys with ADHD being drugged. And what parents don't realize is ADHD drugs cause stunted growth for young children. They cause heart disease. Some of them are against the law in Canada because actually you get heart attacks from it. But long before heart attacks, you're getting arterial sclerosis. It also causes brain changes that don't disappear as teenagers, but just turn into addictions to caffeine, addictions to internet porn, and the inability to commit to a long-term relationship. These are all the more adult stages of ADD and ADHD. And in the new book, I map at every stage of life how when we get ADHD as children and what causes it, which they all say we don't know, we do know. It's all there in all the literature. I just quote PubMed again and again, all the causes of ADHD, the rampant imbalance today. And as we move through stages of life, people don't recognize it just turns in, as your brain develops, ADHD turns into something else. One of the consistent ingredients that goes along with ADHD in an autistic child, an Asperger's child, ADHD child, is dramatically low glutathione levels in the body. Glutathione protects the brain from brain energy or free radical damage. In all those cases, dramatically low glutathione levels. Every person who has dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's now predicted that 1 out of 3 people over 70 will have dementia and Alzheimer's. My younger sister has Alzheimer's. My older brother has dementia and early stages of Alzheimer's. This is becoming another rampant epidemic in America. The cause is so clear. They keep saying we don't know the cause. Go right to the physiology, and you'll find that, well, I can't go into all the causes. That's a whole other book. But I talk about the causes. I talk about the remedies, natural remedies, but natural remedies don't work if you don't eliminate the causes. If I give you, say you have a headache, and I actually have a natural pill that will take away your headache, which I don't, by the way. But if I had a pill to give you to take away your headache, but you keep hitting yourself in the head with a hammer, will that pill work? No. But for people that don't hit themselves in the head with a hammer, it will work. Well, there are 10,000 studies on natural solutions for ADD and ADHD all over the place. They just don't work all the time, as drugs don't work, because people don't know, how am I creating this every day by my lifestyle choices and decisions? So anyway, more on that subject is at marsvenus.com. Just get a free download of the book. For now, it's free. Soon it will be on Amazon. You can order it and buy it, but it's an easy read. And particularly as a techie, for some techie guys here, because they don't realize that they have huge amounts of ADD, because they think, what about, I have no problem focusing. I can focus on my computer for 10 hours. And I remember talking to one of the world's experts on ADHD, and I looked at him and I said, you know, you have ADHD. He says, that's ridiculous. I have total focus. I'm so focused, my wife can talk to me, and I don't hear a word she says while I'm thinking about something. That's also ADHD. That's a problem with attention, where you can't shift your attention here, but you become overly focused on one thing. And I'll finish my talk by talking about how ADD is creating huge problems in relationships today, is that it causes men become hyper-focused on one thing. In the beginning, they can be hyper-focused on her, but once the newness goes away, he becomes hyper-focused on his work. And he doesn't take the time to rebuild his testosterone. So half the men at 50, all the men, the average for a man at 50 has half the testosterone levels he had as a younger man. I have 25% more. And I know exactly how I did it. I explain it in my book, so I live a long, healthy life. This is why men die, as their testosterone levels start dropping, dopamine levels drop. But anyway, focus, for men, they become hyper-focused. And for women, they become hyper-focused on the things that would theoretically release oxytocin, other people's needs. So they're overwhelmed. So overwhelm, the adult symptom of ADHD, is so common in women, it's unbelievable. It's like, I have no time for me. I have to do this for this person. Who says? It's your brain taking on more than you can do. This is ADHD, and it can be corrected. These are simple solutions for all these things. People are writing into me. It's like, my child is now taking your vitamin C and grapeseed extract that you recommended, and he suddenly changed. And he says, Daddy, I like this so much more than the medicine. This makes me feel so good. Just simple anti-inflammatories for the brain, rather than taking a drug that does not cure anything, nor do they claim to cure anything. It only creates more of the same problem that caused ADHD in the first place. Very similar to any drug addiction. Anyway, you've been a great audience here at Google. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for the great work that you do. Appreciate it.